Hey there, and welcome to Cwak Gaming. Today we're going to go over 7 crucial survival tips for when playing on Super Badass mode, otherwise known as Zombies Always Run. So what is Zombies Always Run? Well, it's one of the settings at the beginning, not the difficulty setting, which determines how much hit points they have and how much damage they'll put out. No, this just means that they're going to act feral at all times of the day. So as soon as they spot you, they're going to run after you, they're going to chase you down, and they're going to feast on your delicious entrails no matter what time it is. No more slow, staggering zombies during the day, easy to kill. No, we're talking about coked up zombies here. Okay, so let's jump right into number 1. Make sure you know the order of operations. When starting this game, you'll receive 8 quests to help you learn the basics of the game. You want to complete at least the first 7 of these before venturing in any direction. Doing these will ensure that you've got a club for braining zombies, a bow and some arrows for getting those ×2 sneak attack bonuses before you even get into combat, and some armor for when you do. Once you've done the first 7 quests, which are all quite easy, you'll be given the last quest, which is to locate the trader. If you have a look on your map, you'll see a small icon, and that'll also be visible on your compass. This might help you decide which direction you want to start scouting in if you can't see any towns from where you are. Then, as soon as you've got a few bits worth selling, head on over to the trader. You never know, he might have a high quality melee weapon. Maybe sell that pistol you found that's only got 8 rounds in the magazine and get yourself a purple hunting knife or iron club that's going to provide days worth of killing. Also, while you're there, check if he's got any good tools. I'm personally a massive fan of getting a good pick at the start of the game if I can. It's going to help with mass producing gunpowder. Once you've finished trading, you're going to want to start looking for a base location. We'll talk more about what I think makes a good base location in tip number 2. Once you've found somewhere that you want to live, I recommend you rush the following build order as soon as you can. You want to get 20 bits of leather to make a bellows. Use the bellows and a few other materials to make a forge, and use your forge to make an anvil for that forge. Then you can produce forged iron, and then you can produce a workshop. Once you've got a workshop, you can craft superior tools and weapons. You can improve them in the combined section, and you can also make ammunition providing you've got the gunpowder. So just to recap the order of operations. When you start, you want to do the first 7 quests. Then you want to go for a little loot. And you want to sell that loot and get some decent tools and weapons. Then you want to look for a base. And then you want to get a bellows, a forge, an anvil, and a workshop. Number 2, looking for that good starter base location. Bear in mind, this might not even be where you spend the first 3 or even 4 nights. But for me, the most important thing about a base location is the biome that's around it. Personally, I like a base that's on the edge of several biomes. This means that it's not too far to go in either direction when you want to start looking for the resources that are unique to that biome. My favourite biome is probably the desert, because it gives you yucca fruit to eat and aloe, which will make first aid bandages to recover lost hit points. And trust me, you're going to lose hit points. But deserts are lacking in wood, clay and water, so it's helpful if you're on the edge of a forest biome as well. The problem is, of course, is when zombies always run, you can only do a fraction of the scouting that you could normally, so sometimes you're just going to have to make do with whatever you've been given. Besides big strong walls, there's one other thing I like to consider when looking at a potential base location, and that is there a nearby working chemistry bench? Chemistry benches are awesome. They require half the amount of resources to make the same amount of gunpowder and antibiotics as normal methods. This is going to be incredibly helpful to your survival. Now, you can build your own chemistry benches, but definitely not right at the start of the game. So sometimes you just want to borrow someone else's. You can try and find a working chemistry bench at traders, pill shops, pop and pills pharmacies, the backs of garages, and the strip clubs called Booby Trap. Okay, so we've talked about the kind of areas you want to look to find your base in, but in terms of the actual building, I like something that has multiple levels and offers a good view of the areas below. Here you can use choke points to make sure that you've got maximum firing opportunities at the zombies. If you can force them into one area as they're trying to get up to you, it makes them easy to Molotov cocktail and means that you can just spray your AK-47 or your shotgun a whole area and still hit something. Okay, survival tip number 3, don't be in a rush. If you're sprinting across the map and you're on 2 stamina and a zombie sees you, you can pretty much kiss your ass goodbye. You'll want to keep your stamina high for combat purposes. The reason is because in 7 days to die, stamina directly affects how much damage you put out. If you have a look in your tools or your weapons, it will give you an entity damage, which is basically against zombies, and a block damage, which is basically everything that's not zombies. So trees, ground, buildings, boxes, that kind of stuff. When your stamina is between 90 and 100, you'll be doing 100% of your damage. When it's between 80 and 90, you'll be doing 90% of your damage. 70 and 80, 80% of your damage, and so forth. All the way down to between 0 and 10%, doing just 10% of your damage. If you're doing just 10% of your damage, it's going to take you 10 times as long to kill something, which probably means it's going to kill you first. The other thing I mean by not being in a rush is to use stealth a lot, especially if you're on the inside of a building. It's very common to find zombies that are asleep. These can be easily taken out with a headshot with a bow and arrow. Saves the need for fighting them all together. It's a much better idea to clear the whole building first, sneakily, than to wake the whole building up after you start breaking into the first cabinet you see. Survival tip number 4. Keep a beer or a coffee in your hotbar at all times. I said earlier that you want to keep your stamina high because if you're ever sprinting across the map and you get attacked by a zombie while you're on 2 stamina, you're probably going to die. Well, if you can drink a beer or a coffee without having to stop and go into your inventory, you might just survive. You'll be able to run away whilst letting your stamina recuperate and then hopefully kill it. Beer is actually also really good at the lower levels for when you're struggling for stamina, especially when you're doing activities like mining or chopping down wood or smashing buildings. The high stamina will keep your damage high, which will make your resource gathering go all that much more quickly. Survival tip number 5. Combat is easier outside. You always want to get the zombies to engage you outside where you can, at least until you get yourself some good armor, some good weapons, and some good guns. If you do have to fight them indoors, try and fight them while they're asleep. Use a bow and arrow to get the ×2 headshot damage. If they're awake, try and fight them in an open room. This will give you more space to try and dodge their attacks. Also, try to not stand on the body of a decaying zombie. It will slow your movement speed down, making it easier for the other zombies to catch you. Always know your exits and your escape routes, especially when you're in the bigger buildings like the skyscrapers. It's very easy to lose the stairwell or your way out. Survival tip number 6. When scavenging, know what your high value targets are. Prioritise your looting. Hardware stores for your tools. Pills and pharmacies for medical supplies. Gun shops for the obvious. Bars are really good for getting beer. Oil refineries are great. You can often find 25 red barrels in those, which will sell for loads at the traders, and also bookshops for all your schematics, gun schematics, armor schematics. You can even learn to make a scooter. And finally, survival tip number 7. Keep a stack of Molotov cocktails on you at all times. Hordes, whether they're roaming hordes or blood moon hordes, can be easily taken down by a few well-placed Molotov cocktails. There is one problem with them. Currently there's a bug which causes people who are connected to the server to desync from it when a Molotov cocktail is thrown. I'm not sure whether this is for dedicated servers or whether it's just for people hosting their own. What will happen is someone will throw a Molotov and anyone connected to the server will actually desync from it. Zombies will still appear to be running, but they'll be running on the spot on their screen. On the host side, it'll be fine, everything will be running smoothly, but the player won't be running around. So that's just something to keep in mind if you do like to use Molotov cocktails. Okay, so that was my 7 crucial survival tips for playing on Zombies Always Run. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, I'd appreciate you giving me a like. If you want to see more like this, hit the subscribe. From me at Cwak Gaming, happy hunting.